Minister and a Minister for Labor. Now you're back and you've been nominated to the Ministry of Labor again. Is there anything more we must know apart from this critical thing?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Perhaps what I may have to add is that you indicated I was a DC, but I was also an MC, and then I was a deputy regional minister before becoming a regional minister.
You started from DC and rose to become a regional minister and now Minister of State.
Yes.
Right. Meteoric progression. Yes. Honorable Sambiahi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, unemployment in our country is becoming a security problem, becoming so alarming, and so governments try to create employment opportunities for the youth. The MPP government and Anamado, in their first term, tried to introduce some job opportunities, which was called NAPCO. Mr. Chairman, anytime government creates job opportunities should be given to all the youth. But what I saw about this NAPCO employment opportunity was that recruitment mostly were done at the DC's office, and that people were asked to show their party affiliations before they were recruited. Honorable Nominee, don't you think that job opportunities must be created and given to all Ghanaians? Anytime government creates opportunities, all Ghanaian citizens must benefit, devoid of their party affiliations. Don't you think that we should move away from this partisan job recruitment so that opportunities can be given to all Ghanaians to benefit, as against show your card before you are recruited?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, let me say that I get the idea behind the question, but when it comes to policy, NAPCO is not directly under my ministry. So ideally, perhaps I would say that I should not be the one to respond to this question. But since he also added the general issue of persons looking for employment and they being asked to produce their party card, maybe I may have to come in at this juncture. What I do know about NAPCO is that when it was time for recruitment, they did advertise on the web. And I have a difficulty to believe whether on the web only persons belonging to one particular political affiliation had access to that. Most of the recruitment were coordinated at the district assembly level, but I'm not aware of they being coordinated at the DC's office. But that is why we are also opinion leaders within our communities. If in case we find somebody in society abusing the law like this, that it behoves on us to be able to draw the authorities' attention to it, such that it is addressed. The right to work is a must for everybody. You shouldn't belong to a particular political party before you should have the right to work. And I think I will at any time condemn such an action, should it come to my notice. I am not aware of what the honorable member is talking of.
Mr. Chairman, the nominee said that NAPCO is not under him directly, but you were always reporting on number of jobs NAPCO has created anytime you met the press. So what are you saying today that NAPCO is not? I know that is not directly under you, but you have been accounting for number of jobs NAPCO has created. In the same way, you are not responsible for teachers in this country. At any time there is a industrial unrest in the teaching sector, it's also fall under your domain. So what do you mean by NAPCO recruitment doesn't fall under you? Mr. Chairman, my second question is.
So all that was not part of your question.
Just draw his attention.
Oh, no,
That as a labor minister, he was reporting on how many jobs NAPCO has created. In one breath, we are reporting how many jobs, but you don't want to account for it. Mr. Chairman, my second question. On February 1st, 2017, 1st May 2018, the Honorable Minister is quoted to have said that Akufo-Addo's government has created 1 million jobs so far. Can you tell this committee how many jobs Akufo-Addo's government has created by the end of 2020?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. If you indulge me, I will first make an attempt to answer the first point that you made. I report on jobs that Planting for Food and jobs have created. But you agree with me that Planting for Food and Job is not a product under my sector. But I do report on that. So the fact that I report on NAPCO does not mean that I'm the minister responsible for management of activities of NAPCO. But on the number of jobs, yes, it is true. On 1st May 2018, I indicated that the government of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo had created approximately 1 million jobs. And even though I don't have the exact figures for end of 2020, the last time we reported on was in September 2020, and then the figure was around 3 million jobs. 3 million jobs. Yes.
Minister nominee, thank you. How was the 3 million jobs created and the distribution? You want to share the statistics with us, sector by sector? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Chair, I will make the details available to the committee when I get back to it. But I think that I have, on a number of occasions, even come to this House and have given these figures out already. But if still it is the pleasure of the committee to have the details, I'm more than willing to.
And Chairman, another clarification: the 3 million jobs, public sector or private sector, or a combination of the two?
Combination of all.
Mr. Chairman, the nominee said in September the government has created 3 million jobs. On 13th August, the Vice President also said that the government has created 2 million jobs. 2 million jobs. 13th August. That was what the Vice President said, that the government has created 2 million jobs. And you're also saying that in September, you have created 3 million jobs. Is it that between August and September, you created additional 1 million jobs?
Well, I don't know, and I'm not aware of what you're talking of, but I have officially turned out the 3 million jobs, and I will be prepared to defend the 3 million at any point in time, that when I get the opportunity.
And you promise, Chairman, you make the document available to us?
Maybe even by the close of the day, I will.
Yeah, we should, and with dedicated emphasis on the dichotomy between jobs created in the public sector and those created in the private sector. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, my last question.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, my last question has to do with the Labor Act. The Labour Act. The Labour Act. The Labour Act talks about casual workers. Casual workers. Casual workers. And that companies or industries are not supposed to engage casual workers more than 6 months. I mean, after 6 months, you have to regularize their employment. But we know that in this country, there are a lot of companies and industries, because of the Labour Act, they engage the people after 5 months, and then they terminate their casual employment. After 5 months, then they re-engage them. What is your ministry going to do to ensure that the industry adhere to this requirement by the Labour Act?
Honorable Chair, I would love it if the honorable member will refer me to the appropriate sections of the Labour Act so that I make reference to that.
Honorable, are you suggesting that the specific issue he raises is not in the Labour Act?
I have actually heard this severally, but sometimes I also think that, Honorable Chair, I would love, given how sensitive this issue is and the nature of it, I would love if this were perhaps answered outside the distance, because outside public view, in the sense that you have active players within the labor industry. Managing and not going against the law in itself is not an offense. But if you are also not very careful, you will also have people who will take advantage of the law and then will be abusing the right of people. And that's exactly what the honorable member is referring to. Indeed, if they manage their labor the way he described it, as I said, it is not against the law. But you and I also agree that that is not the best way to do, because everybody enters employment and will want to be assured that he has a reliable job every day. He doesn't get up one day and then he's told that tomorrow you can no longer come to work. But fortunately for us, what we are doing is that we have identified some of these weak points within the Act. And we have started a process of amending aspects of the law. Indeed, we've gone very far with our development partners to tease out those areas which we think are not of major interest to the public. And therefore, we are trying as much as possible to
Chairman, with your indulgence, Minister, you see, in responding to the Honorable Samsinahi, you said that he should refer to sections of the Labour Act. You too, you just said you want to amend sections of the Labour Act. Tell us which sections of the Labour Act you want to amend. But to put his question in context, casual workers have no guarantee of employment security. Casual workers in Ghana have no guarantee of income. Some of them are abused and paid below even the minimum wage in people's homes quietly. How do you seek to address that?
If anybody engages somebody and then pays the person below the minimum wage, that is against the law. That is against the law. You can't engage somebody and pays that person below the minimum wage. Because the minimum wage is that wage below which you cannot engage somebody and then pay the person. So if you so pay the person below the minimum wage, you are acting illegally. But then if you engage the person within the period before the 6 months and disengage that person, that one is not against the Act. But to answer leader, let me say that it is not just one aspect of the act which is being amended. We have actually had a stakeholder meeting, and we have sent words to them that they should actually look at the act and make proposals as to which areas they think needs to be amended. So we have had several proposals. It would be unwise for me to say that it is only this aspect that is being amended. Depending on what the stakeholder is looking at, we get feedback from many of them.
Yes. Further.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, Honorable Minister-Designate. On a similar matter, may I refer the Honorable nominee to Section 65 of the Labour Act, which makes provision for procedures to be undertaken under redundancy, and Section 66, where some exceptions are provided for. And with the indulgence of the chairman, to just state Section 66, the provisions of this part do not apply to the following categories of workers. Workers engaged under a contract of employment for a specified period of time, and then the C, workers engaged on a casual basis. In the mining industry specifically, the Ghana Mine Workers Union have severally over the past decades and also in recent times bemoaned the trend of increasing non-standard forms of employment, fixed-term contract casuals by multinationals. In cases even where multinational firms in the mining industry have a mine life of 25 years, 20 years, still resort to some form of outsourcing casual workers, fixed term, just because Section 66 provides them the latitude. What is your view on this, and what would be your steps you would take to ensure that the ordinary Ghanaian worker is given the adequate protection? Thank you.
You see, Honorable Chair, I indicated earlier on that certain things may not be moral, may not be morally right, but then somebody can exploit the weaknesses in the law and take advantage of it. A typical example is what you were just referring to. One counts for a mining lease over a period of time, and then just says that, no, I'm going to change the form of my work, maybe from direct production to outsourcing. If the person does so within the remit of the law, there's no way you can fault him, because yes, what he or she is saying is within the confines of the law. But as to whether morally the decision of the company is the best, is a different thing altogether. So we have had cases, especially in the Tapa enclave, where some gold mining companies actually had to change their forms of operation. Of course, you cannot say that you will restrict a prospective investor on how he or she will want to operate, provided it is within the law. You have to allow, except that that which is due the worker must be given to the worker. Appropriate compensations must be paid, and then, as much as possible, the road to changing the form must also not be disadvantageous to the worker. They must, in a way, find a way of getting them permanent work, getting them work as well. So, in the particular case that you are referring to, we had a lot of negotiations, and even though it was a difficult pill that the workers had to take, it was also not against the law. So eventually, they were duly compensated, and many of them were also given employment within the outsourced companies. So that's what I do know about it.
Mr. Speaker, just a quick follow-up. In the same vein, in 2017, Goldfields Ghana Limited conducted a heavy redundancy, and in the process, about 2,500 staff were laid off and reabsorbed following the restructuring or outsourcing of their mining and heavy maintenance portfolios. Subsequent to that, these affected number of staff have been denied the opportunity to join labor unions. Would you investigate that and when given the nod, and to ensure that the affected staff are not denied their right to join labor unions? Thank you.
Honorable Chair, I am aware of this case he just referred to, and it's a case we have actually handled. In fact, we actually mitigated the effect of the redundancy. We negotiated with both parties and was able to resolve the issue. So, to the best of my knowledge, there is absolute peace at the place. If there are any fallouts and they let us know, we'll pursue it further.
Very well. Honorable Agalga.
Thank you, Honorable Nominee. Sometime last year, your ministry appeared before the Public Accounts Committee and gave strong indication to the effect that Cabinet had given approval for your ministry to develop a roadmap towards the unification of all pension schemes in our country, the resultant effect of which was to end up with the security agencies other than the armed forces migrating from the the captative pension scheme to the SNIT pension scheme. Now, following that announcement, a lot of agitation occurred within the ranks of the security agencies other than the armed forces, and this prompted the minority to react. And the reaction was that your government should take immediate steps to amend Section 31 of the National Pensions Act to include the other security agencies apart from the armed forces as an exempted group from the SNIT pension scheme. Early this year, in January, when the president, just before the swearing in, the last State of the Nation address, President Akufo-Addo announced that he had instructed that an amendment be done in respect of the Section 31 that I alluded to earlier on. I'd want to find out from your outfit what initially informed the decision of government to migrate the security agencies other than the armed forces from the captative pension scheme.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, Act 766, which is the new Pension Act, has a provision which says that the minister responsible for pensions should, within 5 years of coming into effect of the Act, work towards unifying all pension schemes within the public space. When ideally this should have been done in 2015, but it was not done. So when I assumed power, it was one of the issues which I had to be confronted with. In actual fact, we could also not implement the new act in 2015. We had to ask for extension because most of the schemes were not ready. So naturally, that was also one of the reasons which led to it not being handled at that time. So yes, there are quite a number of institutions which are currently not under the SNIT pension scheme. We have so many other schemes. So we sort of started working towards unifying all these schemes. And then in the process, we had representation from the security agencies indicating that their work is not different from that of the military. And they are surprised that perhaps we will treat the military in a different way from them. So they will want a situation where they will also be treated in a different way. So eventually we had to resort to the employer, which is government, and to seek their counsel on that. And the decision of cabinet was that yes, we can unify all other forms of pensions, but exclude that of the security agencies. So that's the mandate we have now, and that's why we're going to work.
Chairman, with your indulgence, what the Honorable Agalga just asked you yesterday, your colleague, the Minister for Interior, was here. You are speaking to what he probably indicated as a collective decision of cabinet, which suggests that cabinet is departing from pension unification to one for which you are granting moratorium for men and women in uniform with the security agencies. Are you working in collaboration with the Minister for Interior to amend Section 30 of the Act, Act 766?
I'm working not only in collaboration with the Minister of Interior, but also with the Minister of Justice, the AG, because eventually he will have to help us with the drafting and everything. So yes, and I indicated earlier on that this is a cabinet decision, and certainly a cabinet decision involves all members of government.
Now, my last question to you has to do with the SNIT pension scheme. You earlier talked about the need for unification under the Act 766. Now, many public sector workers, including teachers, have complained bitterly that following their migration from the Cap 30 pension scheme to the SNIT pension scheme with its 3 tiers, they have become worse off, and that when they go on retirement, what they take home as a package is very meager. Some have actually indicated that a lot of their colleagues died premature deaths because of what they take home as pension benefits. And this has been occasioned largely by the migration from Cap 30 to the SNIT pension scheme. What do you have to say about this?
Honorable Chair, I think my honorable colleague may have to situate his question in the right perspective, because the migration from Cap 30 to SNIT pension has been a long issue, and I don't think that is the subject of their discussion now. What is actually happening now is rather the migration from full SNIT pension to the 3-tier pension scheme, which started off just last year, January 2020 coming. So I don't know whether that is what you are referring to, because if my memory serves me right, it was since the 1980 that the migration from Cap 30 to SNIT actually took place. So what is of current issue now is the migration from only SNIT to a 3-tier pension scheme now. And that, I agree what you are saying is true, because one, NPRA, which is the regulator, I agree, has not actually given enough education to people as to the implementation of the 3-tier pension scheme. So somebody retires, take a check from SNIT representing his past credits. Somebody retires, take a monthly pension from SNIT, and then the person doesn't even know that he's also entitled to another check from the occupational pension scheme that he or she belongs. So All that the person knows is that, yes, when I'm going on retirement, I'm entitled to a check from SNIT. So he takes the check, and then he waits for the monthly distance. But many of them are not aware that they are also entitled to a third check from the occupational pension scheme. I agree and I concede that even if you put all the three together and compare it to maybe somebody retiring on a full SNIT pension and taking a lump sum over a period of time, there's a gap which government has committed itself to, that for all such persons who do have a gap for the year 2020, government is going to meet that gap. So that shouldn't be a problem at all.
Yes, Sir Joseph.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The coronavirus pandemic has dealt a huge blow to the country. We have seen a lot of companies downsizing their employees, and many people are losing their jobs. In response to this, on page 148 of the NPP manifesto, under the Ghana CARES, the Ghana COVID Alleviation and Revitalization of Enterprises program, we have talked about establishment of unemployment insurance scheme, which is to help provide temporary income support to former workers who lose their jobs. Please, can you tell us about the status of that program and how is it going to be implemented?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, maybe before I go into the substance of the question, let me say that when the announcement first came that we were going to establish unemployment fund, the understanding out there was that, oh, every unemployed person will have an opportunity to have some kind of money from government. I beg to say that that is not the intention of the fund. As you rightly put it, the intention of the fund is that we have learned quite a lot of lessons from the COVID. There are novel issues which are coming up. Before COVID, nobody anticipated that in a year we'll have such a huge issue on us. So many people will be dislodged from their work and they will be declared redundant for no fault of their employers. So what government sought to do is to create an insurance scheme where government will identify an insurance scheme, pay a money to it as a stakeholder, and all other stakeholders will equally also pay some amount of money. So if in an event such as COVID comes up and people are unable to work, such persons can then apply to the fund and get something, one for subsistence and also for retraining, so that they can relocate to some other jobs. So that is the intent of that particular fund. As to where we have raised, we have set up a technical committee that is working on the nature of how the fund is going to operate. And it is made up of participants from the social partners. We have employers represented. We also have labor unions represented, and government as well is also represented. The Ministry of Finance has, through the supplementary budget, which was approved just before elections, I think that some amount of 50 million was also set aside as a seed money for the fund. So if you ask, this is what we've done so far.
Mr. Chairman, in 2020, government renovated and revamped about 8 public employment centers across the country. However, the knowledge of these centers and the services they provide to the public is very limited. Please, I want you to take this opportunity to tell us more, especially the general public, about the public employment centers and what we can do to make it much more relevant to the people who need the services.
before the, Honorable Chair, before the coming into place of Act 651, which is the Labor Act, employment issues were centralized, and the Labor Department was the key actor when it comes to people actually lodging or people looking for job actually going to send their details and actually waiting for job offers. So there's a popular place in Kumasi, which to date is known as the Labor Department. In the morning, you will see people queuing up, going to wait for offers from would-be employers. But with the coming into place of the current Act, Act 651, we have liberalized the labor system. So government or the Labor Department is not the sole body that has the responsibility of getting statistics and placement for persons that want to be engaged. Private persons are licensed to play a similar role. But we still think that the Labor Department can still be relevant, especially in hard-to-reach areas. That is why we have decided that, yes, we will bring back to life some of these labor office. And we are doing so with our development partners. EU has been a major partner. GIZ has also been a supportive partner in this direction. As we said, we have renovated and brought back to life 8 of them. We are in the process of adding some 20 more. It is our wish that we will be able to cover every district of the nation, but it will require a lot of resources. So we are moving gradually. But even going beyond that, we also want to develop a web system where you don't necessarily even have to walk to a labor office before you can go and lodge your information. So we want a situation where you can have an application on your phone, and then by using the web, you can log on your information so that whatever you want will be logged on. I think that is the way to go. It's very critical. Critical in the sense that apart from it being a marketplace where job seekers and job owners will meet and exchange ideas, it also gives us a direction as to what labor requirement of the nation is. So it can be a pointer to the training institutions as to what type of skills to train so that it will be relevant to the labor market.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Honorable Nominee, my first question has to do with child labor. You know, the U.S. Department of Labor, in their 2018 report, raised issues about worst forms of child labor in Ghana, especially in agriculture, fishing, and mining sectors. What concrete steps have you taken to address this issue of child labor in Ghana?
Thank you very much. Honorable Chair, I am aware of a study commissioned by the U.S. Department of Labor on the child labor situation in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire in the areas of cocoa production, but not with reference to other areas. They have so far conducted 3 different surveys. The first one was done in 2008, and then 2013, 2014, and the last one was in 2018. Honorable Chair, the results of that survey is that in most of our cocoa growing areas, more children are engaged in cocoa production. The implication is that if we are not very careful, we consumers may be forced to reject cocoa which is produced with the labor of children. So I agree with the honorable member that this is a very important issue that needs urgent attention. As a result, together with our partners, we have developed a national plan of action. In fact, I inherited one from my colleague, which got exhausted or elapsed in 2018. And subsequently, we have also developed another one, a second national plan of action to combat child labor. And what we do is that we have been able to bring all actors within the child labor environment, and then we meet and discuss, we coordinate their activities, and also monitor them to find out what they are doing to help eradicate child labor. I must agree that we have a huge tax on our hand. A huge tax in the sense that I remember in this very house, once a colleague of ours brought a statement on child labor, and I heard some of our colleagues contributing to the statement. It showed you the level of understanding of issues of child labor, even amongst members of this house. And we are supposed to be the lead eye of society. So if we ourselves do not even understand and appreciate issues of child labor, then
I'm interested in that part about issues relating to state. Is it the one defined by them, or defined within our circumstances?
Unfortunately, we don't have a local definition of child labor. And
so it's their definition of child labor that is being used to judge our local circumstances. Is that right?
Honorable Chair, it is not their definition of child labor. It is our definition of child labor, because we were also party to it. We have developed for ourselves what we call National Hazardous Activity Framework. So when anybody comes to do a survey, they use our own document to conduct the survey. And our document is not different from that which has also been prescribed by ILO and other international organizations. So that's why I said it is not their definition, but our collective definition. And
on a number of occasions, members of this house have been invited to meet some of these groups. I recall the last meeting I partook in was at the Kofi Annan Center. And the things they described as child labor are things I partook in my days growing up. I'll spend the weekend with my grandmom. I'll walk with her to farm and back. I'll carry loads. Sometimes it's plantain, sometimes it's cocoa. And if you look at that, they call that child labor. But this is how, it's my social setting. Is that what we're using to describe our system as child labor?
Yes. I think even this debate, even though I'm not supposed to debate you, Mr. Chairman, it's a clear pointer to the fact that society still has a difficulty in understanding issues of child labor. And I may differ from your position, because I thought the same way when I had not had the opportunity to handle the subject. But when I had the opportunity, my appreciation of the issue has actually changed. And Mr. Chairman, I beg to say that it is a major social problem. Yes, you may be lucky, you succeeded one out of the lot to be able to confront the problem. But then, just look back to those days, the people that you were in that same practice with, how many of them have been able to advance to your level? Many of them may have lost out because of child labor. And as much as possible, we should encourage everybody to be out of this.
That's my first question.
Yeah, please continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My second question has to do with job creation. Earlier on, Honorable Samsonahi asked of the number of jobs that you've created in the last 4 years. And you indicated that
You've created 3 million jobs and demonstrated your readiness to defend that anywhere. When you read your handing over notes, page 35, this is what you stated. During the period, 2,740,472 jobs were created in the formal sector. Out of this figure, the Planting for Food and Jobs program created 2,299,627 jobs. This is what you stated. And then you come to the 2020 budget. You indicated that in the public sector alone, you created 350,000 jobs. But when you look at the figures, because there are budgetary allocations to pay the people that you have employed, you realize that in 2016, the total number of people on government payroll was 626,781. In 2020, as it is reported in the 2020 budget, that provides the ceiling for the entire year, is 702,528, indicating that over the 4-year period, the number has increased by just 75,747. So where do you get this 350,000 figure from? And besides the 3 million you talk about, you are reporting on 2.7 million. Honorable Chair, can I answer him? Yes. The Transitional Provisions Act actually stipulates that handing over notes should be ready by middle of the election year. So if I reported in the handing over notes, it is not at the end of the year. So I am telling you, and I cannot come before this committee and lie to the committee. I have indicated my readiness to supply you with the information by the close of day, and I'm ever willing to do that. So I still stand by what I said. If I'm given the opportunity to update the handing over notes, this will not be the figure that you have, because the handing over notes was done, I think, 6 months even before the elections. On the issue of public sector workers, you know, it is not every public service worker that is paid directly by controller. You should know. You have those that are paid directly by controller, especially those in education, those in civil service, local government, and what have you. But there are some that are subvented. And their records may not even include what you have. So if you indulge me, I will say that, why don't you wait? I'm saying that I'm going to provide this information. Why don't you wait to have the figures so that perhaps if you have any issue, you raise about that. You see, when you are talking about increments, you also lose sight of the fact that the figures are not static. You also have others that are retiring within the same period. So if you just use marginal increment without also taking into consideration those who are also leaving the system, then you may be wrong in your assumption. So trust us, we are experts in this, and for this, I think that I can provide you with the right information.
Mr. Chairman, my last question. Irregular migration. You recall that in 2020, in your budget, you promised to put in place some mechanisms to check this development. What is the status now?
Thank you very much. Migration has been part of humanity. If you read the good book, it will tell you that at a point in time, Israelites had to leave Egypt to go and live in the promised land. And if you look at the development history of every country, especially even in the world. The West, America, had its development when many persons migrated from Europe to go and settle there, and when our ancestors were also moved from here as slaves to go and work there. So migration has been part of us. But what society hates is migration, one that is under compulsion, and migration which does not recognize the rights of the person. Ghana as a country is interested in the welfare of its citizens, be they working in Ghana or abroad. What we noticed was that there were a lot of innocent Ghanaians that were transported to some parts of the world, especially within the Gulf states. The Gulf had a peculiar labor arrangement that we call the Khalifa system. What they do is that they invite you, you come and live with them in their homes, you work for them, the hours of work are not stipulated, your passport sometimes is taken away, your telephone sometimes is also taken away, so you have no means of communicating with the outside world. Sometimes even your monthly stipend is not given to you. It is saved and given to you only at a time when you are exiting. As a result, on a daily basis, we had cases of Ghanaians suffering, constantly making calls to, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, calling on them to come and rescue them and what have you. So what we did was to place a temporary ban on export to the Gulf states, especially those who are going to work in the domestic department of work, and then those who are going to live with their employers. Ever since, we have engaged most of the recipient countries and have developed bilateral agreement with them. Hitherto, we were not even having our own domestic labor legislation. Last year, we succeeded in getting this same house approved for us a legislation to cover domestic work. So now we have a benchmark that we use in negotiating with sister countries or recipient countries. Besides that, we have also put in place a system whereby the will-be migrants will also be trained. Imagine somebody being picked from a typical, excuse me to use the word, a rural community who perhaps has never used some of these modern gadgets before, and then sent to an environment where you'll be faced with these modern gadgets. Automatically, that person will not be comfortable with those gadgets, and in the process, they may offend their employers. That is where some of these abuses do come. So we are also putting in place a system to train them even before the export. So this is what we've done so far. I have sent a cabinet memo to cabinet, given the detailed work we have done, and asking cabinet now to lift the ban. So when the new cabinet is put in place, I think this will be one of the first issues they will look at.
No, I was giving you opportunity straight away. I'm giving you opportunity to ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a follow-up to the answer you just gave. After the ban, the migration or trafficking of particularly females to the Gulf and other states has not stopped, but it has gone underground. They are not leaving from Ghana, but from our neighboring countries. What has been done to ensure that even though this illegal activity is still going on, but these women, these girls will still be protected because the abuse is still ongoing?
Yeah, that has come to our notice. So we have had several meetings with, especially the security agencies, National Investigation Board, NIB,
National
Bureau.
Intelligence Bureau.
And then Immigration Service. And together we are looking at, because most of them either use the international airport or use unapproved routes to leave the nation. I have personally, on 2 occasions, visited the airport where I saw some people actually in the queue going. When I asked them where they were going, one of them told me that, oh, I'm going to Dubai. What for? To go and work. I asked the person, oh, so whom are you going with? She turned just to point to the contractor that was sending her, only to find out that the contractor had absconded. So that is the practice. Currently, what I do know is that at the airport, it is being checked by the security agencies. But what we don't have control on is some of them using unapproved routes to leave the borders of the nation and then eventually joining other countries. There are also cases where people are said to be Ghanaians. They come, you ask them or communicate with them in any Ghanaian language, and they are found wanting. I think that people also prefer hiding under the name of Ghana to perpetrate some of these things. But whatever it is, I must admit that it is not a good practice, and it must therefore be streamlined. I know that it is also a business opportunity for people, but you have to juxtapose the general interests of Ghanaians as against the individual interests of some few business persons who also want to make a trade out of that. It's a policy choice we'll have to make, and personally, I think that the lives of innocent Ghanaians should not be jeopardized just for the sake of some few people who want to make money.
Chairman, I have one follow-up to the nominee. To address the problem of exploitation and abuse of the recruitment of this category of young people or even adults to the Arab Gulf region and many parts of the world, you placed a ban on private recruitment agencies authorized by the Ministry of Employment and Labor through your Department of Labor. When will you lift the ban? And when will you regulate properly the work of those recruitment agencies, since they themselves are a source of some of the problem of abuse?
Mr. Chairman, I thought this is the question I just answered. But I saw that the Honorable Minority Leader stepped out. So maybe I will want to restate what I said.
No, I was hearing you. I was just at the corner. I was hearing you. I'm just saying that mine is the ban. When are you lifting the ban?
I indicated that I've sent a cabinet memo to cabinet requesting cabinet to lift the ban. Unfortunately, cabinet could not take it before the elections. So I'm hoping that when the new cabinet resumes, it will be one of the first issues they will take.
Very well. Yes, Honorable Producer President.
Thank you very much. Honorable nominee, congratulations. You will agree with me that one of the major challenges we face as a nation is the ad hoc measures we take to deal with unemployment and labor issues. If given the nod, may I know what your ministry will be doing to provide the nation with accurate and timely labor statistics to help you address most of the problems that we have in the country? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the Labor Act puts the responsibility of turning out labor statistics to the ministry. We have tried in the immediate past to do that at least twice every year. But even that, I think that we need a system from which we can be able to tell the situation at any moment in time. I visited the country and they could tell me the employment situation even on weekly basis. But unfortunately, we don't have such a system here. What we do currently is to rely on various agencies to provide us with information. So what we do at our end is just to collate all this information and put them into one document. My predecessor will agree with me that before he went to the ministry, there was a project called the Ghana Labor Market Information System. It's been in the banner for quite a long time. It is an auto system whereby will be employed and will be employees will log on their information to a system, and then it will be like a marketplace whereby they will meet and exchange ideas, and depending on that, recruitment will take place. I earlier also alluded that it can also be a pointer to even the training institutions as to what they should do, what type of skills they should do. They should train so that they will be useful to the labor market. The system has not been functional over a period of time. But fortunately, just before the end of last year, we were able to convince government, and government has accepted that it funds the project for us. So we're going to have, there's a project at Ministry of Finance called Skills and Job Project, which our ministry is a major participant. And one of the key things we're going to do is to look at a portal that will handle this particular system. But I must also concede that we already have advantage of having state institutions that are already experts in IT. So I'm going to link up with my colleague, the Minister for Communication, to see how best even we can use their outfit to help us and their expertise to also help us to be able to build this system that will go a long way to help us. It is our estimation that by the end of the third year of this second term of Nanado, this project will have been completed, and then we will be able to turn out accurate figures on a timely basis.
Well done. Very well. Okay. Honorable.
Most grateful, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I hope that the honorable nominee will guide our clerk. I noticed the rendition of his name. The Baffour is different from what the president is telling the committee. I don't know if the nominee has averted his mind to that. The correct rendition of Baffour, is it B-A-F-F-O-U-R or B-A-F-F-U-O-R, as the president is telling us? Which one is accurate?
Honorable Chair, the honorable colleague is using double marks, so I don't hear him very well.
I'm talking about the rendition of your name for the accuracy of our records. Your name, what is the... Because we see a discrepancy, your CV and the President's communication to Parliament.
The name is Ignatius Baffour Awuah. The Baffour is spelled B-A-F-F-O-U-R.
Okay, we will take note of that. I want to return to the question that the Honorable John Kuma asked you about the CARE initiative, the CARE initiative that many Ghanaian workers are looking up to. Did I hear you say that a technical committee has been set up to implement it, and that it will cost 50 million Ghana cedis?
I didn't say it will cost 50 million Ghana cedis. I said that the Ministry of Finance has put aside 50 Ghana cedis as a seed fund for the project. And I also indicated that there are other stakeholders. And let me also state emphatically that it is not meant for only public sector workers. It is meant for all workers. So Ministry of Finance did that because government, apart from being the regulator, is also an employer to some extent. So we expect other stakeholders to also more or less contribute to it.
Chairman, with your indulgence, Minister, I need clarity as the Honorable Ablakwa proceeds. The Honorable Kuma wanted to know the status of the unemployment fund as an integral part of the CARE program. The CARE amount was communicated to us by the Honorable Minister for Finance. Is this 50 million seed money for the unemployment fund? As you proceed to answer him.
Exactly, that's the understanding I have. And I indicated that this will be a seed fund which will be paid to an insurance company. And then, besides that, we will also expect some other stakeholders to also make a donation or a contribution to the fund.
Mr. Chairman, how does the nominee reconcile? I hold in my hands the supplementary budget estimate presented to this House on the 23rd of July 2020 by the Honorable Finance Minister, Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta. And by the way, we wish him a speedy recovery, and we look forward to having him here. Page 6 of the supplementary estimate, paragraph 38, the Finance Minister said, and I quote, "Mr. Speaker, we wish to take this opportunity to announce to the people of Ghana that their President and his team have done a lot of thinking since March. We have brainstormed over the crisis with a view of using the challenges it presents, rather as an opportunity to transform Ghana for the benefit of all Ghanaians. I am happy to announce that in the coming weeks, the President will launch a 100 billion Ghana cedis development program, an ambitious and unprecedented 3.5-year program called the Ghana Cares Program, also known as Obatampa, which will anchor the comprehensive transformation of our society," unquote. At page 82 of the budget statement, paragraph 412, the Minister repeats, "Mr. Speaker, we estimate that it will require around 100 billion Ghana cedis of spending and investment inflows to fully fund the initiatives under the CARES program from 2021 to 2023. So how do you reconcile your 50 million and this 100 billion announcement, which is the record this House has?
Honorable Chair, what I'm talking of is far different from what my honorable colleague is. He is talking of the Global Care project, but I'm only referring to only one aspect of the Care project, which is the unemployment insurance. The Care project is not entirely about unemployment issues alone. It's about total national issues. Yes, what I'm talking about is a subset of a bigger issue of what you are referring to. But specifically, when we are talking of the unemployment insurance, the figure set aside is 50 million. But I must also admit that it is also possible that going into the future, in subsequent budgets, he may also add to that.
Mr. Chairman, my second issue relates to the migration of Ghanaian workers to the Gulf states. And Amnesty International has just put out a report on their plight, particularly in these COVID times, where they highlight gross human rights violations in Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, and Qatar. The International Organization for Migration, also in September 2019, carried out a special study. And this study confirms what the Honorable Awuah spoke to a while ago, that the so-called ban did not work. They say that more than 62% of those they have surveyed travel through connection men to the Gulf regions. And 71% have told them that their experiences have been outright abusive. 76% say they were not allowed to negotiate their own wages. 62% reported that upon arrival, their passports were seized by their employers. IOM is calling for urgent action. It appears at a bilateral level, government to government, something has to be done. It's not just a matter of lifting the ban, as your cabinet memo suggests. What, as Labor Relations Minister, can you do to rescue our compatriots who are living in modern-day slavery in these countries at a bilateral government-to-government level? And related to that, IMO is also chiding Ghana for delaying in ratifying the ILO Convention 189 that will help establish standards for recruitment and placement of domestic workers. Please respond to this very important matter.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I thought I handled this subject earlier, but maybe for want of emphasis, I will want to re-echo what I said. I am one of such persons who agree that such abuses should not be encouraged and countenanced at all. And my personal position on this perhaps may not reflect the national thinking, but I must admit that even if a single Ghanaian should suffer because of should suffer any of these abuses outside, I will be the first person to condemn it. You were asking what we have done. Ghana is an active international player. We are an active member of ILO. At the global level, the global community has condemned that act, which is perpetrated in the Gulf. I indicated that they even call it the Khalifa system. So ILO, in one of our international conventions, actually condemned that act and asked the respective countries within the Gulf states to work in coming out of that system. So yes, through our influence there, we have actually initiated steps, and that to me has also helped in the sense that most of these Arab countries have actually also worked on their own laws. They have had an introspection, looked at their own laws, and have actually made so many progress in handling human aspects of the humane aspects of work, especially domestic work. Back home, initially, we were transporting, or maybe we were exporting people, but we were not even having our own local migration policy. So it was just like anybody at all could just get up and send people without reference to any document. But now, fortunately, we have in place a migration policy. So whatever one has to go through before the exportation is done is detailed in the migration policy. Besides that, I have also indicated that we are also doing one-on-one with the recipient countries, one-on-one bilateral agreement. We can now do that because if we meet, say, United Arab Emirates, and we want to have a bilateral agreement with them, they will want to see our own domestic labor legislation and then compare it with theirs and see whether there are areas where we can synchronize. But initially, we were not even having our own domestic legislation. But fortunately, last year, this House approved for us a domestic legislation. So yes, we are also looking at our own law as against theirs. And then ultimately, we are also looking at even training people before they leave. Because there are many people that are recruited from corners of this country. They move first to Accra, and then all they know is that they are on the next moment they are on the plane moving to the destination country. Of course, culturally, there may be differences. So if you don't train a person and he goes to meet a different culture altogether, it will take a little bit of time before the person adjusts. So all these things are being addressed. Cabinet actually tasked us to be able to put in place a convincing plan before the ban will be lifted. And I'm convinced that given what we have done, we can be able to convince Cabinet to lift the ban. So, as I indicated, we have sent a memo to the Cabinet, and I believe that Cabinet will look at it.
Mr. Chairman, finally, though the nominee should be reminded about ILO Convention 189, the international community is not pleased that we have delayed in ratifying that. So you want to keep that on the front burner. But finally, I want to find out from the nominee if there is any research underway or any policy you are considering to carry out a labor market research on the kind of professionals, graduates, the kind of workforce that we should be training linked to our training institutions and our higher institutions of learning, looking at our development agenda as a country. So there has to be a nexus between you, education, the National Development Planning Commission, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the next 30 years. The World Economic Forum is saying that the labor market now has changed. A lot of jobs are going to go extinct. And countries that are forward-looking are researching, and their labor ministries are making plans in that regard. Is this something that has come to your attention? And what really is the government thinking around these matters?
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, it is within the plan of the ministry that by the end of the second quarter of this year, there will be a national employment forum whereby stakeholders within the employment sector will be brought together to exchange ideas on the future of work. Honorable Chair, in the past 50 years, if you went to my village and you asked any young person what work he would want to do, the person will tell you that I will want to go into cocoa cultivation. 50 years on, if you go to the same community and ask a young person what work you want to do, perhaps the answer will not be the same. Because one, the land is even exhausted. And the land is not even as productive as it used to. Climate has had effect on the land, and then population increment has also had effect on even the portion of land that one can have. So certainly, the world is changing. What we see as work today may not necessarily be what we obtain going into the future. IT is becoming very, very important in the workspace. Currently, there are inventions where we have even driverless vehicles. So assuming somebody was trained and the profession of that person is to be a driver, your car owner comes home the next moment and he tells you that he's bought a vehicle that doesn't need a driver. What happens to you? You lose your job. So certainly I agree with Honorable Member that there's a need for us to have a national conversation on jobs, especially the future of jobs. And Honorable Chair, fortunately, I have an appointment from ILO. I'm a member of a 13-member board constituted by ILO to advise the world on the future of work and how the world is also going to adapt to new changes so far as the world of work is concerned. So, as somebody who is advising the world, I think that if I don't transmit the information and the knowledge I get at that level to my own country, then I'll be doing a great disservice to the country. So certainly, by the end of the second quarter, a national discussions on the future of work will be held. If honorable, it may please you, I will invite you to be a participant of that.
Yeah, very well. Then Honorable Ajari.
Thank you very much. Honorable nominee, it is right that by Act 885, that's the Youth Employment Law, the National Youth Employment was established. It's interesting to know that they are running two different schemes of service. One applied to a group of people, another applied to the other group. Again, at YEA, they don't have any bargaining agreement. What will you do if you are given the nod to correct this anomaly?
Honorable Chair, I did not get the first part of the question very well, so if she may please come.
So the first part deals with the fact that people at YEA get different salaries for the same work done. Yes, two schemes of service are running at YEA, you may want to find out, and they don't also have a collective bargaining agreement. So you may want to find out on these matters and see how you will sort it out.
Honorable Chair, let me say that I am not aware of two sets of people doing the same work and at the same time receiving different salaries. I agree that there are two sets of persons engaged by YEA. One are staff of YEA itself, those who implement the programs of YEA, and then we have interns. The interns run on a 2-year cycle. So I don't know whether that is the differentiation she's making. Otherwise, she may have to make it a bit clearer to me.
I have made the question very easier because I don't really want to go into NDC, MPP, but it will interest you to know that two schemes of service, not in the sense of those who are permanently employed and those who are on contract. Honorable Minister, if you are giving the nod, please take an interest in YEA and see the two schemes of service running. I'm telling you on authority because there are a lot of complaints to us in this caucus. And so you may want to take an interest in that one, find out and see how you resolve it, in addition to the fact that they don't have a collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah, if Mr. Chair, if the honorable member is drawing my attention to an issue pertaining there, then I will thank her for that information. I will investigate and find out. But as I indicated earlier on, YEA itself has its own staff. Yes, I agree. Some of them may be temporary. Temporary in the sense that sometimes within the public service, if you engage persons and they have not been confirmed by the Public Services Commission, they cannot be said to be full-time employees until they are confirmed by the Public Services Commission. But I thank you for the information. I will do further checks on that.
Okay. I think my last question has been answered in part. I wanted to know the status of the implementation of the Ghana Labor Market Information System you've indicated. Do you have plans to extend it to the 60 regions once everything is complete?
Yes, except that we are also limited by funds. I have to be honest. Even the little work that we have done, we were able to achieve that through the support of our partners. There is a project we have with GIZ, which is going to concentrate on the 3 regions that used to make the former Awuah region. The reason being that through their own survey, they have identified that Awuah region is one region that has a lot of cases of illegal migration. And they will want to...
Honorable Minister, which region?
The old Awuah region.
Okay.
No, I indicated that the 3 regions that used to be the former Awuah region. So that project is going to concentrate in Bono East, Bono, and then Ahafo. There are other interventions from other stakeholders which will also look at other parts of the country. But for the limitation of funds, I would have loved that we cover the whole nation. That's why I indicated that what I'm looking forward to is not just even to have the physical office operational. These days, we also have a workplace which is not limited by space, but you can have a workplace even on your web. So we are looking at a web application where, irrespective of where you are in the nation, provided there's an internet connection, you should be able to access the facility.
You're done. All right. You're not on my list, but I'll consider you when I'm done with those on my list. Oh, let me finish with Suhini and then I'll come to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable nominee, my first question is simple, but double barrel. Very simple, but double barrel. As alleged, why did you single out, in 2019, why did you single out the Chief Labor Officer, Eugene Polite, for abuse and victimization, and in his place, even appointed Francis Ofori-Kwanzaa in a letter dated 16th August 2019. And whilst at it, I also want to know if you are overlooking or supervising what industry watchers have described as an attempt to balkanize the activities of recognized labor, especially in the case of the Akosombo International, that's AICL. Let me get the acronym right. The Textiles and Garments Workers Union, I know, have complained. So are you aware of the efforts? Are you overlooking or supervising the attempts to polarize the AICL workers under the guise of conducting referendum or verification to determine whether majority of the workers affiliate to the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union? So it's double barrel, like I said. Why single out the Chief Labor Officer for abuse and victimization and attempt to replace him with this other person that I named in a letter dated 16th August 2019, and also seem to be supervising, overlooking this attempt to balkanize our labor unions?
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. I think that the honorable member has been very nice and charitable to me, because by the 2 questions, he has also even answered my question. Because in one breath, I'm being accused of not supervising the labor department. And then in another breath, when I also took certain actions to actually make sure that the labor department works and works very well, then I'm also being accused. So that is that. But that is just by the way. Today I came here with the chief labor officer, whom you refer to, and he is seated there. It wasn't a personal issue. We had actually decided that we wanted to have a tripartite coordinator at the ministry. That tripartite coordinator would be the liaison between the ministry, employers, and labor unions. And I thought that we needed a very seasoned person to be actually to handle that particular office. And of course, anytime we had an international engagement and I was going, I also needed that person along with me. So I had discussions with that person and indicated that I would love that he comes to join us. Initially, the impression I had was that, okay, he was okay with it, only to learn that he wasn't okay with that. So eventually, we had to sit down and agree that, okay, if he was not okay with it, he goes back to the labor department to go ahead. And as I said today when I was coming, I even came with him. He has been one of my supportive workers. I don't have any problem with him at all. It wasn't anything personal. If there's anybody I relate so well with in the ministry, he's one of the persons. I don't hold any personal distance to him. And then coming back to this issue of Akosombo tester, I'm hearing the case for the first time. Actually, what I expected to do is that, you know, the labor department is one of the major, it is even the face of the ministry, let me put it that way. So if things move on very well, then we are seen in a very good light. If we have problems there. So oftentimes, I do personal checks to find out what is happening there, and they also give me information. But unfortunately, on this particular issue that you are referring to, I was expecting that if the union at Akosombo Tester had a problem, and they are not getting the cooperation of labor department, at least they will refer to me, so that I will be in the known, and then be able to also give my input to it. But to the best of my knowledge, this issue has never come to my table. So how will I handle an issue which has not come to my table and which I have no knowledge of? That is the challenge I have. But at any point in time, if they bring it to my attention, at least I will do the best I can for them. But let me, Honorable Member, Honorable Chair, let me state that one of the challenges we have now is the issue of union pluralism. The law allows as many unions as possible to be formed at a workplace, provided you have more than one person joining that particular union. So today, you may have a union in the workplace. Tomorrow, you may get back to the workplace only to learn that no, another group of persons have teamed up to constitute another union. You cannot deny them that right. It is their constitutional right. Perhaps what they may not have is a bargaining certificate, because the law says that when you have multiple unions within a workplace, you give the bargaining certificate to the union that has the highest number. So when the chief labor officer is confronted with such situation, what he does is to conduct a survey to find out which union has the largest number. And when he is convinced that a particular union is the one that has the highest number, he so grant them the bargaining certificate and withdraw the old one if another person had it. So that has been the practice. As I said, I'm not privy to this case, so I don't know whether they followed that process. But I think that the chief labor officer is a very seasoned person, and he wouldn't make mistake on this.
Well, so I will hope that you will pay more attention to this if you are favorably considered by this committee, because there seems to be some issue relating to which union should have the bargaining certificate. And you are right, there seems to be a suspicion that there's an attempt to take away the bargaining certificate from one union. Mr. Chairman, my next question has to do with whether the nominee in your last office as minister carried out any assessment on the impact of the banking sector collapse, the impact of the banking sector collapse on employment and the capacity of organizations to expand and to create jobs. And this is also important because in your earlier answer, you talked about pensions and different tiers that we operate. Now, I do know that some organizations, especially those without unions, are denied, access to their tiers, though we all know what the NPRA Act says. And some perhaps are attributing it to possible, the possible collapse of some of these institutions where some of these investments may have been taken. So I just want to know if you have carried out any assessment on the impact of the banking sector collapse on employment in the country, and whether you can give us the number of jobs lost in the last 4 years. You have given an indication as to how many jobs were created, the number of jobs lost.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, let me say that at hindsight, I cannot give the figures of persons that lost their job through the banking restructuring. Maybe I may have to give you that information at a later time. But on the issue of persons being denied of their tier 2, I think that this is an information, if you can be gracious enough to give me the details, I will love it. But I hardly can't believe that, because, for public sector workers, before the implementation of Act 763, the difficulty we had was that most of the unions were not ready with their respective schemes. So all monies which were meant for them were held in a temporary pension fund account at Bank of Ghana. But since 2007, that amount was to the tune of about 3.1 billion, has all been transferred to the various occupational pension schemes. Pardon? 2007 or 2017? 2017.
Okay.
These monies have been transferred to the various occupational pension schemes. So I have difficulty to understand if you say that some workers are being denied of their tier 2 funds. The idea of the 3-tier pension was to allow workers to invest their own monies in an instrument which will give them best returns. So government is only a regulator. Government is no longer the main implementer or the main person holding the funds. So if you have any such case and you give us the information, we will investigate. I think just last week or so, Senior Staff Association of Universities of Ghana brought up their issue that some portions of their contribution cannot be relocated. So I called for a meeting, the government side, to look at that issue. And truly, when we had our own meeting, we were able to locate the money, and we are working towards it. So if anybody has any such information, they should bring it to me. We'll work on it.
That's fine. But you don't have the records for number of jobs lost as a result of the banking collapse. You don't have that.
I think I once spoke on that. So when I go back, I can easily make a check on that. And it was within the vicinity of 3,000.
Chairman, what thousand? 3,000?
Yeah.
Banking sector job losses?
Yes.
It probably must be more than that, Minister-Designate.
Pardon?
I say it probably should be more than that.
Yeah, that's why I said that I remember I've made a public statement on that before. So I will want to revert and actually get the exact figure. But if my memory serves me right, it was within the vicinity of 3.
Job losses. Following the cleanup of the banking sector is estimated at 3,000 jobs.
Net, yes.
Thank you.
Well, it will be important to get the correct details because I know at least one institution alone employed more than 3,000 workers. So you may want to perhaps give us the records and also maybe add the job losses as a result of COVID. So we know how many jobs have been lost of COVID. So we know the number of jobs that have been lost in the last 4 years as Minister of Employment. But my last issue is just to draw your attention to...
But if I can talk on COVID, you see, oftentimes when we are talking of jobs, we limit ourselves to what happens within the public space, forgetting that there are a number of people who are engaged within the system. So there are some who even work within the informal economy. And that's where they earn their means of livelihood. But we don't have a system where we capture that which happens within those spaces. During the peak, just after the peak of COVID, the first phase of COVID, we commissioned a study. And that study covered over 700 enterprises throughout the country. And the respondents were over 40,000. The revelation was that there are so many ways by which workers and employers responded to the impact of COVID. Some responded by downsizing their workforce. Some responded by resorting to salary cuts. Some responded by employing the combination of downsizing and salary cuts, depending on the agreement which was reached by both workers and their employers. But then, it's also, the study also revealed that as and when we distanced ourselves from the lockdown period, then we saw restoration of work. So as of the time...
Chairman, if I could, because we are all trying to manage time, if I could just proceed. I think my question is just about the figures. If the figures, not the reasons why people may not have been employed. It's just that if you don't have it, if you have not done the assessment, that's what I did. I did that. If you don't have the records, if you have not done the assessment, it's okay.
Please ask your next question. Please.
Yeah, so we can move on. We can move on. I mean, if you don't have it, we can move on.
Honourable member,
why do you have a problem?
I think that
you have to deal with me, whether you like me or not, Osler. You have to deal with me. I can't help you. Now, the physician's assistants have a unique problem. The physician assistants, especially the graduates, the degree holders. The degree holders, when they are mandated to do a one-year internship program. Yet, whilst undergoing this internship, they are not remunerated. They are not on any allowance. And so they go through it sometimes on empty stomachs. Yet their diploma colleagues are given some stipend as a result of the single spine salary structure. We also know that some of them enroll onto the National Service Scheme, but if one may have already done national service before doing a degree, then he is denied or she is denied the opportunity to take part in the national service scheme. But within the period of mandatory service to the nation, they are not supported. Has this come to your notice? And if it hasn't, is this something you want to look into to find a solution to, Honorable Nominee?
In the first place, this is the first time I'm hearing this is the first time I'm hearing about this issue. But I also think that if they make representation to me, together with the employer, that is the Minister of Health, we'll sit down and look at the issue. Because for those that are doing their national service, as you rightly indicated, they are already on a scheme, the national service scheme. And for those who are not on national service, we wish to identify or define their role at the workplace. Because if you are not a national service person and you are not a full-time worker, for what reason are you there? It should be properly defined. And as I indicated, if it comes before us, we'll sit with their employers and then.
I said they have mandate. They are required by law to do mandatory internship.
Honorable, I think you've exhausted your questions. Thank you. Right. Honorable, I'll accommodate you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please. Thank you very much, Mr. You have no right to distract me when I'm asking questions, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. 3 quick questions.
Honorable Ayaga, we agreed on 6. You just said you would have 1 question. That's why I accommodated you. 1. We agreed on 6 across board. We all agreed at the meeting here. Yeah. So you allowed 1 as an extra, please.
Okay.
But Chairman,
the one normally comes with
we also agreed that we'll manage it within 3 hours. That's why I said that let's be flexible. So far, the nominee is within 2 hours, and I'm guided that leadership will be guided on this matter. So the flexibility is what, even though I agree with you, Honorable Yaga, you didn't indicate straight to me.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much. I know that's what I said to, because I know that the understanding is that I will ask just 1 question, but something came up that I thought I should. It will be quick. Yeah, it will be quick. The first is a simple question. Article 190 of the Constitution sets out the public services of Ghana: prisons, immigration, fire service, judicial service, Ghana Education Service, all those public services. And the 199 says that the retirement age is 60, compulsory retirement age. And there was an amendment to 199 which enabled a 5-year contract to be given to a retiree, subject to certain conditions. And also judicial officers, Article 148 deals with judicial officers, and 150 also says that judicial officers must retire at age 60. There's no amendment that gives a right to contract after age 60. I am sponsoring a bill which is proposing that we should further amend the Constitution to extend the compulsory retirement age from 60 to 65. Because at the time that, and then that's without, we can also say that there could be a contract after 65, but the compulsory retirement age should be 65 instead of 60. Because in 1992, when we set the retirement age at 60, the life expectancy was 57.46 years. Today, life expectancy in Ghana, due to improvement in health and etc., infrastructure, is 64.42 years. And we're losing a lot of experienced, very healthy, capable people in the public service to retirement. Will you support a proposal to extend the compulsory retirement age to 65 instead of 60, both for members of the public service and judicial officers?
Chair, you are preaching to the converted. I have raised this on several platforms, because even if you are looking at the sustainability of pensions, when you have a shorter working period, it doesn't really augur well for the health of your pension schemes. Because when people stay more in work, they accumulate more funds, they are able to retire on a handsome pension than when their working period is very short. But I must also admit that it has its disadvantages too. Some of the disadvantages are that, one, we live in a country where unemployment is considerably high. You have more and more people completing school and will want to be engaged in the system. So if you have a chunk of tired hands already in the system and the new ones are also not getting jobs to do, it is also a concern. So we don't have to look at it from only one side of the coin. We may have to look at it from both sides and then be able to make a judgment. But I'm looking at it from the perspective of sustainability of our many pension schemes. I will go for what you are talking of.
The second question is a quick one. You were involved in appointing consultants to value temporary pension fund accounts to enable payment. It wasn't completed, and because of that, you had to agree on a chunk amount, a fixed amount for retirees, pending the completion of the process. I'm told that the process, the draft was completed and presented. You're supposed to do stakeholder consultations. You haven't done that. What is holding you?
What you're saying is very true. I indicated to you that between 2010 and 2016, because the various private pension schemes were not ready, the occupational pension schemes were not ready, all amounts which were meant for such pensions were kept in the temporary pension fund.
What is holding you?
No, please take your time. I'm coming there. So what really happened was that these monies were transferred in 2010. But the data accompanying the money to indicate that, yes, Ghana Health Services, your contribution to this money is, say, X amount. But Kofi Manu, who works within the Ghana Health Services, what is his portion? So we had to resort to Controller and Accountant General, who is the main salary administrator of public sector workers, to provide us with the information. When the information was provided, the labor unions objected to certain aspects of it, but then we agreed that generally the data can be relied on. So if anything at all, they should use that data to pay 80%, and then when the reconciliation is done and we are fully sure of the exact figures, the difference is paid further. So that is exactly what we're doing. We are negotiating, and we are actually in discussions with all the stakeholders. My only limitation has been that since the commencement of this new government, we are just waiting for a full mandate to actually continue the work. So if I'm so approved, it's going to be one of the first issues I'll look at.
Last question. What is the devil known as protocol in recruitment into public institutions and agencies? Can you explain the word protocol in recruitment into public institutions and agencies? Are you willing to pass a law outlawing this discriminatory and unconstitutional practice called protocol in recruitment into public agencies. Yesterday, we had issues with the Minister nominee for Interior because of issues of discrimination into security agencies. Can you deal with the wider issue of discrimination?
Honorable Chair, to confess, I don't know of any devil called protocol. Devil called protocol. I do not know anything about that. But if you are referring to favors that people seek because of perhaps their knowledge with whoever is in charge, I must say that that creates an uneven platform for all persons to compete when there's an offer. And sometimes we limit this to political appointees and what have you, but I must say that in practice, it is even, what I'm saying is that it is even broader than that, because somebody may know you as a member of parliament, and he may have known you as his schoolmate, and he will come to you using that window for an opportunity. Somebody may know you as his church member and may come to you because you are his church member. He may ask for certain favors from you. If that is what you are referring to as protocol, then I will say that yes, it exists in our society. But I also want to believe that with the recent usage of digital space in public business, some of these things are being eliminated. Because if advertisement is done on the web will not show the political color of anybody that is applying. So I will encourage that going forward, we may have to invest in IT in most of our activities, which otherwise will be influenced by human activities, to reduce that impact of whom you know and what have you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Honorable nominee, it is estimated that annually 25,000 graduates enter the labor market, yet they do 25,000 graduates enter the labor market, and yet are unable to get jobs. And it is also said that because we do not have unemployment data, it is very difficult to really assess the effect and impact of jobs that have been created and to really ascertain whether we are reducing unemployment in our country. Would you, as a minister, if confirmed, champion a policy to create unemployment data, reliable unemployment data for the country, so we can assess effect of jobs created by your ministry?
Honorable Chair, I'm a bit confused if the honorable member asks about the issue of unemployment data, because the Ghana Statistical Service periodically undertakes what we call the Ghana Living Standard Surveys, and at any time they undertake the Ghana Living Standard Survey, they do put out figures on unemployment. And I don't know whether that would not be a pointer to us as to what the unemployment situation is in the nation. But if you are talking of the labor statistics, I had earlier on alluded to a project called the Ghana Labor Market Information System, which is a tool we are going to deploy to be able to assess and also to be able to inform the nation on day-to-day basis what the labor situation is. So if it is about unemployment, if you care to know, in 2015, when the Ghana Living Standard Survey was done, the unemployment situation was 11.9%. In 2018, when the same thing was done, the figure had dropped to 9.1. And when subsequently in late 2019, we caused another one to be done, the figure had come down to 7.1. So if it is the figure you want to have on unemployment, that is what I have provided.
Thank you, Honorable Nominee. The second question has to do with local content. Would you consider a legislation that would compel all industries, particularly foreign industries in our space, to have Ghanaian workers for, some level of participation of local persons? Because, for example, we have banks today bringing people from their countries of origin. We have construction companies bringing painters, tilers, etc., from places like Turkey. Would you consider a piece of legislation that will allow these construction firms to take some number of Ghanaians when they are awarded contracts in Ghana? And I want you to tie it into this. In November last year, we pioneered a program in Medina called the Medina Job Center. It was an online program to try to connect job searchers to jobs that were available. In less than a month, we had over 2,500 people within the Medina enclave who did not have job applying. We've been trying to connect them to available jobs that are that we from time to time have notice of. Would your ministry want to partner such local initiatives to create jobs for the local communities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will start from where you ended. I think that you may have to get in touch with the Labor Office. They will assist you. They will look at the technology that you are deploying and perhaps advise you on how best you can improve upon it. But on the issue of local content law, I think there already exists some kind of form of legislation on local content. So we may not have to reinvent that. I don't know whether I've tackled all the issues that you raised, but
yeah, I think that the local content law usually, as it stands now, applies to this upstream industries and not really applicable to the service sector, particularly for like the banking industry, the foreign banks that come to Ghana, and then when you look at the construction firms that we employ to work for us, they come along with professionals to conduct works that could have been taken by Ghanaians. Like I'm giving an example of tiling, painting, such jobs that could be available to Ghanaians.
As I indicated earlier on, I'm quite sure that we already have enough legislation to handle this issue of local content. And then the investment code also requires any foreign investor that wants to invest in this country to meet certain requirements, which the issue of local content is one of the major issues. Sometimes it is not only limited to issues of persons to be engaged, but even getting local partners to work with. I agree with you that we need to watch the employment space, but we are, as I indicated earlier on, the world of work is changing. And sometimes you can have somebody sitting in Ghana and be working for a company in US using the digital space. So physically, that person may not be working in US. In the same way, you can also have somebody in the US doing some kind of work in Ghana and earning an income out of that. But that person may not be physically here. So the workspace is becoming very, very difficult to monitor and control because of the deployment of IT. So that's why I indicated earlier on that we want to have a national discussions on employment going into the future, because there are a lot of new developments. Let me give you a typical example. Now, if you want to move from your home to a different place and you want to you can't walk to a nearby lorry station to pick a taxi. You just take your app and then call Uber or any other service provider that can do you that. Most of these people are running companies that are registered outside the country, but using the web, they are operating here. As to what kind of engagement they have or what kind of agreement they have with their so-called employees, it is not known to the labor department, and they are hardly even supervised. So, because they are international in nature and they operate using the web system, so it's difficult to, but if you need to be able to control such distance, you also have to be technologically apt, at least if not above their standard, to be at their own, their level, so that at least you can also be able to compete with them, to be able to monitor them. So I thank you for drawing our attention to this.
Yes, super.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, my colleague were all hips. So, and I hope that he will keep his answers short so that we don't have to go. The employment statistics, he did promise that he was going to furnish this committee with the details. But I'm curious to know how this data, especially when he says both private and public, how these data are collected, how you collect this data.
You see, Honorable Chair, employment activity is multi-sectorial. You have almost every ministry creating jobs here or there. So eventually what we do is that we write to the various sectors for them to provide us with information. So what we do is we collect all this information and put them together and transmit same to the public. So that's what we do.
Well, what about the private? Because with the public, I know, with the public sector, yes, that may be easy. What about the private? The private companies, because you said that you, in the case of, you write to the ministries and agencies to collect this data. And I'm saying that in your answer, you said that the figure that you were giving was both private and public. And now I'm saying, you said, so in the case of public, yes, what about the private? How do you collect this information from the private sector?
Honorable Chair, by law, every person engaged to work must be entitled to SNIT payment. The person himself makes part of the contribution, and then you, the employer, also do some. And you are enjoined by law as an employer to do the lodgement on behalf of the worker. So at any point in time, if you want such information, you can easily go to SNIT, and then they will provide you with that.
No, I'm not talking about SNIT or I want. You have collected data. You have collected information, which you are willing to provide this house. And I was talking about how you got them. And in the case of the public, you have shown how you were getting it. Are you saying that you normally pick this information from the private sector, from SNIT data? Is that how you collect those data from the private sector?
It's one of my prime sources of information.
But you know that that may not be accurate, because you may have persons that have been engaged by a company or a private or any persons, but may not immediately start paying SNIT, sometimes years before that is done, even though it's against the law. So if you are just using data from SNIT, don't you agree with me that it may not give you the most accurate information?
I partly will agree with you, but that is the best we can have for the moment, because the level of informality in the country is very high. Within the employment space, about 80% of work takes place within the informal space. And that is the place where we do not have much information. Somebody may you may complete school with somebody in the same year. You may decide to work within the public space. So perhaps you end up being, say, a teacher. Your records can be traced to where you work. But that person then decides that, no, I have a family business. I want to be engaged in that family business. Before you know, just like you rightly observed, because it's a family business, all such contributions are not done. So information on that person just gets lost immediately the person leaves school. So these are some of the difficulties we have. I must admit that
if you've answered it, then that's fine. Let me just find out, you spoke at length about the job that has been created by the economy over this period, both public and private. But when it came to the loss, especially within the banking sector, you said you didn't really have a grasp on it. Can you tell me, why are you not also interested in counting the number of jobs that have been lost, just as you are counting the jobs gained?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Oftentimes, we are asked, what is the population of Ghana? And the answer is that, well, we are about 30 million. Hardly do we talk of those that have also lost their lives within the accounting period. It depends on what you're looking for, but I agree that even with the job, and I'm saying so with reference to the question which was posed by the Honorable Member for National. Oftentimes, we look at the net figures, leaving out what actually was added on and what actually was left. Because at any point in time, you will have some persons joining employment and other persons either retiring or leaving, and then we also even have those who will be changing jobs in the process. So at any point in time, you can't have some people leaving the net. But I think that for the purposes of our discussions, what we needed most was turning out the figures as regards that which has been the added on. But I have also earlier on made a promise to this House that I will look for that information and provide it.
Yeah, because what we are going to provide this committee had to do with the collapse of the banking, the banking sector.
Yes.
But you know that in almost well-organized economy, they do not only just talk about even people who have gained job or lost job, but they go to even talk about job migration. So job migration. Someone may be having a job today in the banking sector, tomorrow he chooses to move into maybe telecommunication. They track all those, the age bracket, those who have retired, because it helps you in properly analyzing the job market. So will you promise this committee that as if it gets given the nod, you would develop a more comprehensive system within the ministry that will help us to have enough data for analysis, instead of just, we've created this job, we don't even know how many people have lost, we don't know how many people have gone on retirement. Will you try to do that to help the discussions on the job market?
Honorable Chair, perhaps, as I indicated earlier on, this is also going to be the fourth time this same question is coming up. I have made a commitment that the skills and job projects will seek to address some of these things. But even fast waiting for that. You know, on annual basis, we produce this document, and sometimes we distribute some to honorable members. This contains a lot of information, and some of the answers that we are looking for can be obtained from some of these things. But I must admit that the only constraint with this is that sometimes it is only limited to that which passes through our records. And as I indicated earlier on, we have a lot of happenings outside the formal record. But if I must agree, you must agree with me that work takes place outside the formal space too. So we need a system that will capture that as well.
Yes, I want to take my colleague, the nominee to Youth Employment Agency, the YEA, which was established by Act 887/2015. The staff there are supposed to be permanent staff, right?
We have a combination of both, permanent and temporary.
No, I'm talking about the staff of what do you call YEA. They are supposed to be permanent staff.
We have some that are permanent, we have some that are temporary.
Which ones are permanent and which ones are temporary?
Yes, when you are engaged initially, your appointment will have to go through Public Services Commission for confirmation before you transform into a permanent worker. So until that is done, you continue to be a temporary staff.
Yeah, but all those who have gone through the Public Service Commission are permanent staff.
To the best of my knowledge.
Why was there a massive transfer of this permanent staff in 2017 across the country?
Transfers sometimes are management tools.
Come again?
Transfers sometimes are management tools. It depends on what management requires of a particular worker. So management, in their own wisdom, will decide that this person will be good working at this place or the other.
But it was massive across the country. Is that normal?
Well, I cannot think for management, but I think that, as I indicated earlier on, I am convinced that transfers are management tools.
Are you aware that when those transfers happened, those who were transferred were not given transfer grants?
It has not come to my notice.
Will you investigate this and get the necessary actions to be taken?
If within their conditions of service, such persons merit transfer grants, why not? It should be paid to them. But if it is not something within their condition of service, then perhaps we have to also be very careful not to implant something which is already not in the organization's scheme.
Now, could you imagine transferring someone, say, from Accra to Boga, and you could imagine that it will not be part of the condition of service for that person to pay transfer grant?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Unfortunately, this is an agency-related issue. Yes, I have a supervisory role so far as the agency is concerned, but I might not be privy to every minute thing in their condition of service. But as I indicated, if it is within their condition of service, then they should be paid such sums.
So you see to that. You see to that if it is in their
Honorable
condition.
Chair, I have earlier on made a commitment that if indeed it is in their condition of service, then they merit.
No, I would just
if it comes to me, I will make sure that
it is you now. I'm telling you, and I was seeking your indulgence whether you will see to it.
Honorable member, you are not a petitioner, so to speak. You don't have the capacity to petition. So those who brought it, you tell them to petition him.
No, Mr. Chairman, that is one of the essence of this vetting, to draw nominees' attention to some of the things that are happening, so that they could take steps
I don't
to get them
disagree
right.
with you, except that when it comes to seeking personal intervention, then the person must apply personally. You draw his attention. Now, when it's brought to him, he is aware of it, that they have to make a personal intervention.
Yes, Chairman, I want to find out from the nominee, why was it necessary to suspend the condition of service for the YEA staff?
Their condition of service being suspended?
You are not aware?
No.
Will you find out whether that truly happened?
Just like any other working group, I am a head of sector. The sector seeks first the welfare of workers. So if indeed they bring it to my attention, I don't see why I will sit down on it. I will have to probe into it to find out why it's been suspended. I will have a very big difficulty accepting that, because you know, as a ministry, one of our core values is to make sure that workers enjoy what we call decent work attributes. And one of the pillars of decent work is to afford workers the right to negotiate. So I'm surprised you telling me that their condition of service have been suspended. I will find out. I'll certainly find out.
Mr. Chairman, I want to find out from the nominee why it became very necessary to recruit project assistants across the country to take over the duties of district directors and regional directors, and some directors even at the national headquarters.
Project assistants of what?
Project assistants were recruited in 2018. That took over the jobs or the responsibilities of district managers, regional managers, and some directors at the headquarters. And I'm wondering why was it necessary?
No, I want clarification. Regional managers of what?
Regional managers of youth employment agencies and the district directors and some directors at the headquarters. Project assistants were recruited that took over the duties that they were, what do you call it, the duties that they were performing. And I was asking, why did it become necessary for the agency to do this by recruiting project assistants to take over the duties of existing staff?
Well, I have to confess that this is news to me, because I do know in my district, I go there every day and I see the district officer there.
You said you go to your district every day?
No, I'm using it in
You're suggesting anytime you go there?
Yes, I'm using it figuratively, but what I'm trying to say is that my district officer is always at post, and anytime I ask of information, I don't get any indication that he's not in a position to give me that information because somebody else has to do that. So this is news to me.
Mr. Chairman, I want to find out from the nominee, these project assistants that were recruited, why are they on contract? Why are they on contract?
I have indicated to you earlier on that if somebody is recruited and that person's appointment is yet to be approved by the Public Services Commission, then certainly that person will be on contract. It is only after confirmation from Public Services Commission that the person then becomes a full-time employee.
How long does it take between recruiting persons to Public Service Commission before they get regularized?
Ideally, it shouldn't be more than 6 months, but in practice, sometimes it goes beyond that, depending on the queue available. You know, the Public Services Commission has a lot of loads on their hands, and sometimes it takes quite a long time before some of these things are.
Is it a normal practice that these new persons that have been engaged are put on contract, are put on salary levels higher than existing staff?
I don't have any proof of that.
Are you going to check?
If you want me to check, I will.
Are you aware that for the past 4 years, all the government announcements on salary increases have not been enjoyed by YEA staff?
Well, I cannot be privy to that because unlike public services, unlike other public institutions whose salaries are negotiated at the Public Sector Joint Negotiation Committee. YEA is a subvented organization, and they do so with their board. Unless perhaps I inquire from the board, I would not be in a position to know whether they've had increment in salaries. But it is also not automatic, and I want to be quite clear here that unless otherwise, you are paying persons below the approved minimum wage. It is not automatic that any time the Public Sector Joint Negotiating Committee announces an increment in salaries, it is not that it translates automatically to any other organization. At the macro level, you may also have to engage your employers to negotiate. So if there's no opportunity at that level to negotiate, then that one, I may not know about it. Otherwise, the local union will have to negotiate with the management and board for an upward adjustment of their salaries.
And this one again too, can I take your assurance that can I take your assurance that it is something that you take up? Because for 4 years, they might have lost a lot of value on their salary if they do not receive any increase in salary.
Honorable Chair, I wouldn't want to be micromanaging them. That would be unprofessional on my part. I indicated that they have a board that is responsible for their day-to-day management, and I will expect that there will be a good relationship between the board and the workers. So if the board so deems it fit to sit down, and of course, automatically, if it is, if they request for negotiation, the board should be available. If indeed at the negotiation there are difficulties, they can refer to the National Labour Commission for settlement, should there be any disagreement among them.
I know you supervise the agency, and by law, you are supposed to submit even their annual reports to Parliament. And I also believe that you may have a mechanism of interacting with them periodically. Some does it weekly, some will do it monthly. So I'm raising these concerns that as you go, you ensure that the right things are being done there. Because equally, for 4 years, no staff of Youth Employment Agency have been promoted. And all these are serious labor infractions, as you may know. And as the labor minister, there shouldn't be an agency under you with what we call the staff going through this ordeal.
Yeah, the beauty of it all is that we have provisions in the Act whereby any infractions in labor can be addressed. And if any of them is hearing me, and assuming what you are saying is also what is actually pertaining, then perhaps my advice, of course, as a minister, if they bring it to my attention, I can't offer my advice, but I have indicated earlier on that it would not be right on my part to say that, board of YEA, management of YEA, by compulsion, you have to sit with your workers and do ABC. I think that if the workers are convinced that their rights are not being observed, they can resort to law and seek any other privilege that they will want to have.
Mr. Chairman, very last question. Are you aware that some of the staff have no decks?
Have
no decks, no assigned job schedule after their places were taken by these project assistants that were recruited, who are even yet to go through the Public Service Commission. Are you aware of this?
Well, this is something you know. There's no way I will know about this because
this is something that is so loud within the year.
Honorable member,
YEA, that I'm surprised that the Vice Minister will say he has never heard this.
Honorable member, I visit their national office, and occasionally I visit some of the district office, but I have never on any occasion seen anybody not getting a desk to sit on. It may happen. It is not everything I can see with my naked eye, but if that is the case, it ought to be addressed, and I will urge the board to look at it.
And you take keen interest in this? You take keen interest?
I said I will urge them to work.
The chairman, thank you very much.
Yes,
Chairman, thank you very much. Honorable nominee, the banking sector crisis had effect on employment, no doubt. Government so far has paid over 22 billion Ghana cedis to support those, not to support, to enable those who lost their investment to get it back. Some also had their deposits back into their accounts. Since this was a major issue for your sector as well, would you run us through the role your ministry played in ensuring that these Ghanaians who lost their investment had such a great relief? Because 22 billion cedis is no small money from the economy into individuals who otherwise would have been crying and suffering and getting traumatized.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think that as a nation, we have to take certain hard decisions. The decisions may have sometimes consequences on some aspects of society. Honorable Chair, I think at the point in time, government was faced with a huge option, the option of sustaining the jobs and lives of so many Ghanaians that have deposited their monies with these banks. If the banks were to go bad, then certainly all these people were going to lose their jobs. So government, even though this thing does not actually fall within my ministry, the understanding I had was that government came in with a program to actually bail out some of these banks with the interventions it so did. In the process, millions of people had their deposits saved, their businesses saved. But I agree that the fallout was that some workers also had to lose their job. But if you consider the gain as against the negative aspect of it, the gain far outweighs the negative aspect. Because if you have, say, about 1 million depositors having their deposits saved as against close to 3,000 or a little above 3,000 also losing their job. I'm not saying that it is a good thing for anybody to lose their job, but the net gain is far outweighs.
So it's a big relief to your ministry?
Pardon?
It's a big relief to your ministry?
It's a big relief to government, not only to the ministry, yes.
Now let's deal with NBSSI. Within this COVID period, NBSSI is on record to have disbursed 502 million cedis to 288,000 beneficiaries. And again, individual businesses that were created and saved so far as a result of such intervention also came up to 576,000. Is there any collaboration between your ministry and NBSSI with a view to sustaining the gains made? Because you see that largely these are informal sector employment that has been created. The trader at Makola, the yam seller in Efutu, the kebab seller in Tamale, and all that.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, NBSSI is under the direct supervision of the Ministry of Trade. But I agree with you that most of the financial inclusions that they undertook went through the informal sector. One of the core activities of my ministry is looking at the issue of formalization of the informal sector. And one of the tools that we are using for the formalization of the informal sector is digitization and also ensuring financial inclusion. And these were the tools which were deployed by NBSSI. So even though they were responding to COVID issues and also empowering people to be able to, in the post-COVID era, to be able to find their feet in a way, they have also contributed in helping us solve one of the major problems we have within the informal space. So, Honorable Chair, I think that given another chance, I would say that government should continue the NBSSI support to the operators within the informal space.
Now, Mr. Chair, we are aware of the flagship private sector initiative by government called One District, One Factory. And so far, government on record has given us some statistics of factories that have been revived, factories that have been established anew, and all that. Is your ministry tracking these initiatives and the jobs that are being created there too? And if you have been doing so, are you able to give us some numbers?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Yes, indeed, we are active participants of that program. You know, in every district, we have the district implementation committee. And then on that committee, we have the labor department being represented. So the labor department is supposed to give technical advice to whoever the investor is at the local level so that we wouldn't have issues of labor issues or labor infractions even at the commencement of the factory. And then on the issue of jobs created by the One District, One Factory, I think that when I provide the information which I've promised this office of making it available by the close of day, there will be a portion which is attributed to One District, One Factory.
So finally, then I take, Mr. Chair, NEIP, National Entrepreneurship, the program. How has that program helped job creation in the private sector?
Thank you. The NEIP helps to empower especially young persons to be entrepreneurs on their own. And for me, that is the way we should go as a nation. Because unfortunately, If you look at the public sector provides employment for just about 5% of our population, working population. And then the private formal sector also provides employment for just around 7%. So you have close to 85% of employment taking place outside the formal space. Most of the operators within the informal sector are persons that have not had any formal training in the businesses that they are doing. There's difficulty in tracking them as to whether they are making successes or not. They don't have mentors. But with the NERP program, yes, it is a project that seeks to enhance the capacities of persons who engage in it, but there is that element of it which mentors them and also monitors them even after their post-mentoring period. And for me, that is something which is very good, because we need to be able to turn out successful business persons. I have said that the most resourceful persons you see in town are not people who are employed, but they are the people who rather employs. So if one wants to succeed in life, if one wants to make it big in life, in terms of financial gains, then perhaps one of the best ways to go is to try to be entrepreneurs, and successful entrepreneurs do.
Mr. Chair, just a follow-up on that point. So, with all the tools available and opportunities in the private sector, which, in your view, has created a lot of employment opportunities for the youth, what would be your advice to any Ghanaian youth, graduate for that matter, seeking or desperate for job opportunity in the public sector?
I have indicated that the public sector provides jobs for roughly 5% of the working population. And then the private formal also provides jobs for close to 7%. All other jobs takes place within the informal space. But I must also admit that if you do proper segregation of those who are engaged within the formal space, they are mostly those who have higher education and what have you. But I must say, and I can be quoted on record, that the public space sometimes cannot go beyond a certain limit. For instance, if we needed at any point in time X amount of teachers in the system, when we rate the X, unless maybe there's expansion in the school system, you cannot add to it. So the best way to go is to actually go the private way. And in every country, central government is not the major employer. Government rather creates an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. And in doing so, the private sector then engages. That is why oftentimes we say that the private sector is the engine of growth of the economy.
Chair, thank you. I'm done. I'm grateful.
Yes, Honorable Leader.
Chairman, I should thank you. This is the Minister for Employment and Labor. I've had the rare privilege to be at that ministry, and we collectively have worked to improve the general labor situation in the country, of some semblance of labor peace and harmony. I want to find out from the minister, are any threats to the industrial peace of the country, either by public service workers or any section of private workers?
Yes, there is. The re-emergence of COVID is certainly a threat, because I cannot tell how long COVID is going to live with us. But if the situation should worsen, then, Honorable Chair, you agree with me that it may not be possible for us to do things the normal way that we do. And the consequence of that is that it is going to impact on work.
Currently, is there any category of public workers on strike? Is there any category of public workers on strike or any group threatening strike and the reasons for it?
No, not as I'm aware of. There were threats, but within the past few weeks, we've sat down, we are negotiating. So all those who issue threats are back to work and their work.
Senior workers of the University of Ghana and Tewu, are they on strike?
I indicated to you that there were threats. I have a letter from Senior Staff Association of Universities of Ghana indicating that they have resumed work. And
date of the letter, with what assurance did government give them before they resumed work? You have referenced the letter, the date.
Well, I didn't know this question would come up, so I don't have...
Were you to determine what questions
But I can easily get you a copy of the letter.
What assurance has government given them?
Yes, I indicated that we've gone back to the drawing board. We are negotiating, so it is not a question of assurance. Perhaps the best assurance is to tell them that they will be given fair hearing when they come to the negotiating table.
Chairman, my next question is about working mothers. Working mothers. You know, in the public service, there are a lot of women who, subsequent to the performance and enjoyment of conjugal rights, will naturally become mothers if they are graced by God. Our laws in Ghana provide for 12 weeks maternal leave. The ILO Convention 183 has not been ratified by Ghana, which requires that nursing mothers, in order to take care of their babies while still being paid, are allowed 14 weeks maternal leave. What assurance do you have for mothers within the public service and their entitled right to enjoy this opportunity?
Honorable Chair, may I know from Honorable Member if he means working mothers within the public sector or working mothers within Ghana? Because
within Ghana, those who are entitled to enjoy maternity leave and maternity protection, what assurance do you have?
Honorable Chair, my
Ghanaian women.
My honorable colleague has been a minister in the ministry before. He knows how the system works at that ministry. Perhaps our ministry is one ministry which does a lot through consultation, and we hardly, one party to the tripartism hardly takes a decision on its own. So oftentimes some of these things are discussed at the tripartite level to get the buy-in of all stakeholders. I want to assure him that this will be one of the major issues which will be discussed at the tripartite meeting, because let's not forget that...
so what's Government of Ghana commitment? You represent government on the tripartite. Does government have any plans to increase maternity leave from 12 weeks to 14 weeks?
It's an issue which is being discussed, but as I said, that's why I was very careful when you said increasing the maternity leave within the public space. I wanted you to redefine it, and which you included the other sectors, because you can't have two laws operating within the same country pertaining to one issue. So if we are doing an enactment, it should affect every worker. So yes, if within the constituent bodies that is the way we should go, I don't have any difficulty at all, because it's something that as a nation we have agreed.
Where does the government of Ghana stand? Where do you stand as Minister-Designate on this matter?
I am indifferent about it. At a tripartite meeting, if we so
that's agree, fine. I know your position.
If we so agree to
what's Ghana's position on the ILO Convention on the placement of domestic workers, ILO Convention 189, what explains why government has not ratified this convention?
Can you come again, sir? Honorable Chair, please can he come again?
ILO Convention 189 on the placement of domestic workers, yet to be ratified by the government of Ghana. It was even part of the submission of the Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa. Can you explain why we have not ratified it and when we'll do so as a country?
Honorable Chair, my honorable colleague will agree with me that ratification is a process. As part of the process, we even had to domesticate the legislation on domestic workers. So the next move is to come to this house to get the ratification. There's no need getting the ratification.
So why do you domesticate when you haven't ratified? I thought you ratified and domesticate and it becomes part of your internal laws.
Domestication, the legislation that even gives us more power than the ratification, because there's no need ratifying when indeed you don't even have laws to be able to implement that.
Are you not aware that Ghana is measured internationally? Then they keep referring to Ghana. They are yet to ratify the ILO Convention on 189, and it may affect how we are measured in terms of some indices.
I indicated that the ratification is a process, and for me, it is not just about how we are measured, but it is about how well we live by the law. And if you ask me, between ratification and having a domestic law to regulate the domestic work, I would even choose having a legislation, which we have done. The next one is just coming to this house.
Chairman, my understanding reading your handing over notes, we do have an occupational safety and health policy as a country developed over the years. We need to assure every Ghanaian worker, whether in the public or the private sector, that minimum standards of occupational safety and health are respected. When will Ghana have an occupational safety legislation, revising the existing one and improving it to respond to the contemporary challenges of health and safety in the workplace?
Oh, really? I like the concluding aspect, because initially I thought you were asking when are we going to have a legislation on occupational health and safety. There are pockets of laws which seeks to address issues of occupational health and safety. Most of them are sector specific, but we are having a conversation to have an overarching act which will look at the issues of occupational health and safety in totality. As I speak with you, we have presented before Cabinet a memo looking at an occupational health and safety policy and act, which will seek to regulate issues of occupational health and safety. I must also admit that there are certain sectors which have their peculiar occupational health and safety laws and which they adhere to strictly, especially if you take the mining sector. But I cannot say same for all other sectors, so that's why we're doing what we do.
Chairman, I would have to take the nominee back to labor market information system. When will we have a functional labor market information system? I recall that in the July of my days at the Ministry of Employment, a component of it, job marking component, was done. The portal has been done. Young people willing and able to work across the country need to have access to information where they can look for jobs. I understand that the opportunities for jobs are limited in the country. I know that the EU pledged support at the time. What is the status of it, and what are you doing to make the LMIS functional?
I've spoken to this, perhaps this is about the 5th time I'm going to talk on the same subject. I indicated that
mine is on functionality.
The one, Honorable Minister, Honorable Minority Leader, the one you left behind never worked. It never worked because, one,
So when will you make it work? That's my
question. Yes, I have indicated that it is part of the skills and job project that we are implementing.
So when will skills and job project be functional?
I have told you that by the end of the 3rd year of this government, it should be functional. I have said this already.
Chairman, I just referred to, I want to refer to this document, Fiscal Consolidation and Accelerate Growth and Supportive Inclusive Development, Ghana Public Expenditure Review by the World Bank, which says this, and my question would be built in it. In 2015, a consolidated bargaining process allowed an annual wage increase to be negotiated for the majority of the public sector workforce prior to the 2016 budget preparations, a significant improvement over the previous system. Going forward, annual wage increases should be limited to accommodating a growing number of education and health staff. Will you, with the Minister for Finance, work to ensure? I know that you have kept faith with the Public Services Joint Negotiation Team, getting it cleared before budget, which is significant for our country. But there's concern, and that's why the HR component of the LMIS is important. What are you doing? Ghost names, health, ghost names, education, payroll. All the payroll fraud in Ghana is associated with ghosts, either in health or in education. What are you doing to get that cleaned? Thank you.
Yes. I didn't get the quote you made from the World Bank statement, so if you can go back to it, I will love it.
Oh, you can comment on it. I don't intend. I don't intend to go back to the code. I'm just saying that a system was introduced, which system provided that we conclude negotiations on public sector wages ahead of budget. Inherited by you, you probably have improved upon it. But there are concerns about health and education. But if you want me to repeat the code,
yes, I do get it. But
Chairman, I'll go back to the code. I still have it here. And it says a selective public sector hiring freeze implementation in 2015. Then it says in 2015, a consolidated bargaining process allowed an annual wage increase to be negotiated for the majority of the public sector workforce prior to the 2016 budget preparations, a significant improvement over the previous system. Going forward, annual wage increases should be limited to accommodate a growing number of education and health staff. And I tie this to payroll fraud involving education and health.
Yes, I agree that the practice has been that we try as much as possible to finish negotiations ahead of budget preparation. But there's this aspect. Oftentimes, when we negotiate, we only look at the general issues which pertain to all workers, leaving out peculiarities that pertains to particular sector. So that is why in Ghana, sometimes when you hear of labor agitations and what have you, it is not necessarily about salary itself, but it is about some form of allowance or the other. That is one of the advantages we have had from the implementation of the single spine pay policy. But the other negotiations which are sector specific are sometimes delayed. And I agree with you on the point that given the same way we try to negotiate salary itself ahead of time, it is also about time we also look at the other sector-specific issues so that we can be able to accommodate all of them within the budget period. The disadvantage of not negotiating in time is that sometimes you are also handicapped by budget provisions and what have you, because they were not foreseen at the budget time. So I agree with you. It's something we need to work on.
Chairman, may I know from the nominee, the Labor Department, when will you revolutionize it? There are things that they can do on their own, charge some fees, which makes it more operational and functional to restore the honor and dignity of the Labor Department. In the past, everybody worked there to be assured of searching for a job vacancy and where to find it. Do you have any plans for the Labor Department and the Factories Inspectorate Directorate?
As we speak, there's a technical assistance program at the Labor Department trying to advise me on the way to go. So anytime I get a report of the technical assistance team, it will help me.
For the technical advice, what is your own thinking, policy-wise, to resituate it to take its pride of place?
I have alluded to an earlier question that if you take our ministry, perhaps our core business is spearheaded by the Labor Department. So if the Labor Department is working and working very well, we are seen to be working very well. On the other hand, if they are not working very well, then it translates into our general performance. Yes, so personally, I think that Labor Department and cooperatives, I have said this at our annual meeting at the ministry, that is going to be my focus coming into the new term. And it is not just about revolutionizing the place, but it is also identifying that which is wrong and also making sure that we give them the tools to work with. And that is exactly what we are doing now.
What's the state of cooperatives in Ghana? Probably from 1951 to 2021, what are you doing to change the fortunes of cooperatives in Ghana?
To start with, they have a very weak law. As we speak, they are operating under an ordinance, which is totally outmoded. So we are reviewing the law, and very soon we'll come to this house with a proposal.
So Ghanaians should expect, under your leadership as minister, a new cooperative legal framework of legislation.
Certainly, I can assure you, we've gone far.
Now, I take you to a quote from Reuters, and Chairman had referred to it earlier, and I quote, "The use of child labor on cocoa farms in top producers, referring to top producers country, Ivory Coast and Ghana, has risen over the past decade despite industry promise to reduce it, according to a draft of a U.S. government-sponsored report, which has been cited by Reuters. Don't you accept some responsibility that you and the Minister for Fisheries and probably Cocoa Board will have to work towards that conclusion?" Chairman referred to socialization. If your father was going to the farm and said, "Akora Dimechi, come with me, let's go to the farm," that's part of our socialization exercise. Or my father going to his groundnut or rice farm decided that I should accompany him non-school days or some other period. But we seem to have given Ghana a reputation which does not reflect our cultural standing against their formal system. Will you work to restore the reputation of Ghana in collaboration with those other institutions?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I had spoken extensively about child labor and especially with relation to cocoa earlier on. And I indicated that, yes, a survey has been conducted. In fact, at a point in time, we even had cause to actually debate aspects of the findings. We have actually challenged aspects of the findings. So I don't know whether the quote he's making is from the final report, because as we speak, we have had issues with the final report, which we have made our position known to the U.S. Department of Labor and NOC that conducted that particular research. But I agree that the issue of child labor needs to be confronted head on. Unfortunately for us, any research that is done, use our own tools as the basis for the research. The hazardous activity framework, which we developed for ourselves as a nation, is what is used to assess us. In reference to the particular report that you are leading to, initially, when they use their own tools. When they use
Chairman, Minister-Designate, Chairman, I want to. Will you help improve the methodology, which methodology recognizes our cultural and societal values as a people? Because you know that the UN State Department, through the Department of Labor, even downgraded Ghana until you responded to it in 2017. So I just want to know, I don't want, because of time, I wanted to refer to some writing by some authors on the subject. I see Edison Kwame Agbesi, child labor in Ghana, case study of fishing at Elmina in central region of Ghana. The methodology has to be questioned. And I'm saying that you must provide leadership in questioning the methodology, and that will affect the tool that should be used. Chair.
Honorable Chairman, I have indicated that all these researches use our own tools. It is not an imported tool which they use. Yes, I agree. I personally have sometimes questioned some of the tools, but the tools will also have to meet international standards, because we can also have a tool which is far different from that which is used by.
So if the tool international says that going with my father to the farm is child labor, are you going to agree to it? But let me drift. Mine Workers Union, some workers of Goldfields, Ghana, are concerned about their opportunity to unionize, particularly the Takwa mines. Will you give them a collective bargaining certificate? And will you extend same to other mine workers across the country?
I didn't get the question very well, but if my understanding or what I heard is what you actually meant, I don't think that anybody in the right sense of the word can deny a worker from having a union at the workplace. It is the right of the worker.
To take particular interest in Goldfields at Takwa. Chairman, my final question. Pensions. Is government owing the 12th worker group? You made reference to 3.1 billion, which was in the temporary pension fund account. Beyond it, there's been some accumulation of debt. You have an idea what is outstanding in terms of owings to those pension funds?
I don't have an idea, but the system has been that just like any other payments which are done from consolidated fund, oftentimes they will allow for time to value the.
Does government owe? Does government owe?
I know government owes SNIT, but I don't know.
How much does government owe SNIT?
I don't have idea as to the total contract.
Does government owe the category of public sector workers on the 3-tier pension scheme under Act 766? And when will you create regional offices of the National Pension Regulatory Authority for the rest of the regions to be served? I'm done, Chairman. I wish the nominee well if he's able to respond to these.
I would say, you know that the National Pensions Regulatory Authority is gradually opening offices in the regions. The Tamil one was supervised by you, but we have also added Sunyani, Koforidua, and I think Takrady. So we are moving on.
Bolga and Wa.
The attend will come.
Now, Savannah region, you have to.
The intention is to have at least
zonalized
an office in every region.
Okay. Should we look forward to you creating those offices before the end of 2021?
It's not possible. It's not possible. We have to move gradually.
So, if it's not possible, what is your possibility?
I never knew this issue would come up. Otherwise, I would have had discussions with them, because it also depends on their financial flow and what they intend.
Are you still supervising the MPRA, or it's gone back to the Minister of Finance? Or you are jointly supervising them?
We are still supervising them.
All right.
Honorable Minister, I want to read this Act 560, Children's Act, 1998. Employment of children. Yes, Part 5, employment of children, child labor. Section 87, prohibition of exploitative child labor. 1, a person shall not engage a child in exploitative labor. 2, labor is exploitative of a child if it deprives the child of its health, education, or development. When you say tools, Ghana's own tools, are these the tools we're talking about?
It expands this. For instance, if you're talking of a work which will not affect the health of a person, how do you define a particular work affecting the health of the person? It depends on how you look at the work. So, for instance, if you look at the hazardous activity framework that we have developed for ourselves, for instance, if a farm is being sprayed and then you have a child operating within that spraying exercise, the chemical is injurious to the health of the child. So that child is said to be working within an injurious environment. A machete for a child that is less than, say, 13 years, to use a machete, it can be injurious to the health of that child. So that is also classified as something that can harm the child. In fact, Honorable Chair, in almost all the studies we've done on child labor, we have identified that school enrollment rates in Ghana has actually gone up. Primary school enrollment rate is said to be around 98%. That of JHS is also around 92, 94. And now that we have even added free SHS, more and more children are going to school. And not just going to school, but they are also being retained in school. But then the study also shows that in spite of all this effort that government is doing and making available to these children opportunities to school, they still combine elements of work with the schooling that they are doing. And that is the worrying aspect. Because during vacations and weekends, you see most of these children being deployed at the workplace. And that is something we may have to work on to actually educate our people to stop.
Very well. The children has minimum age for hazardous employment. What is hazardous employment? I think that is the law of Ghana. And we should not go beyond this to accept any internationally accepted standard. Because when you study globalization, the kind of standards they appear to set for the whole world, it's unfair. What they have done and reached the top, they take off the ladder and they say climb up. So we should be careful what we accept as international tools. That's what I wanted to comment. Thank you. Thank you for attending upon the House. And you will hear from us.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Honorable.
You're discharged.
I thought we'll be able to finish in time to enable me submit the other documents, which I said I will submit.
Don't worry, you will bring them to us.
I want to assure you that if even I'm unable to bring it today, tomorrow.
Honourable members, we will have 15 minutes walk around. We resume at 2:45.